Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him two lips like roses and clover, and tell him that his lonesome nights are over. Sandman, I'm so alone, don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Laura London. Laura studied experimental psychology at the University of Washington in Seattle and earned her degree in neuropsychology from John Carroll University in Cleveland. After working in the fields of neurology, neuroimaging, and nuclear medicine, she found herself balls deep in the work of Carl Gustav Jung. She attended myriad lectures and workshops with notable Jungian analysts and authors, and worked closely with the Jung Association of Central Ohio and the C.G. Jung Center in Chicago. Laura is a practitioner of Transcendental meditation and Kundalini yoga, and has been a student of astrology for more than 20 years. After receiving extensive training in remote viewing from a prominent member of the U.S. government StarGate program, she worked briefly for a time as an operational remote viewer. Recently, she spent 3 years traveling with Tibetan Buddhist monks in the Mystical Arts of Tibet tour, and is an avid supporter of Drepung Loseling Monastery in South India. She is a creator and host of the podcast Speaking of Jung, Interviews with Jungian Analysts, which led her to Zurich, Switzerland, to visit the places where Jung lived and worked. Her hope is to bring the theories and applications of Jungian analysis to a wider segment of the public. Laura is an avid traveler with a wide range of interests, including the space program and NFL football. Laura, welcome to Nox Mente.
Welcome,
Hi,
Laura.
Jerry. Hi, Nish.
Well,
Hi.
this is a great honor, as I told you in our pre-show.
Oh,
I'm
please.
such a nerd
Honor's
for
mine.
you.
That's so sweet. But the honor's mine. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
coming on.
And I seriously recommend Speaking of Jung as a podcast to anyone to check it out. It is absolutely the best of the best. And you come out of every episode with more than you entered. So I'm plugging it because I believe it. I believe in it.
Thank you, Nish.
So let's get started, Laura. Tell us about the world you grew up in, about the predominant symbols and your early life.
Wow, that's a huge question. I was born in New York City. I live in Chicago now, but I am a native New Yorker. And what I think is interesting about my upbringing is that my mother was born in Italy. And I think we have this kind of stereotype in this country of what Italians are. And I was talking to my uncle, my mom's brother, and
Especially New
that,
York Italians.
Right.
Yes.
He said the majority of Italians in this country are from southern Italy. They migrated over, but my family is from northern Italy, and the culture is very different.
Yes.
Mine's from Naples. Our family's from Naples.
Okay. All right. So you're a little bit further south and on the
But still
west
not.
coast.
Yeah.
Right, but still not southern Italy.
Right.
And so the food is different, and the culture is different. The clothing and the aesthetic and the weather, everything, the topography is all different. And where my mom was born was very close to the French border. So she was only, I think, 95 miles from Zurich, where she was born in this teeny tiny town in northern Italy. But anyway, so yeah, I grew up as an Italian American, and my father was Italian too, but he was born in New York City. And so you said the world I grew up in.
What influenced you as a very young person? So we're looking for the symbols kind of
Pop
that
culture.
set the stage
Like
for
what
the rest of your
cartoons did
life.
you watch on Saturday morning?
I just mentioned the Flintstones to somebody yesterday, and he said to me, "What is it with you and the Flintstones?" And I thought, really? I've mentioned it
They're
before.
awesome.
I've seen every episode of the Flintstones, the Brady Bunch, the Partridge
Oh, yes.
Family, I watched F Troop, Petticoat Junction, Green Acres. I mean, I was a TV addict.
I met Forrest Tucker once.
Did you?
I did.
Oh God.
With
Did you?
with Elkie
Yeah.
Summer on top. Sorry,
On
no.
top.
After
What?
I mean, they were together at the time.
Wow. Okay, we're going there.
Did you have a relationship with nature at all?
I did. I grew up I was born in New York City, but I grew up in northern New Jersey, and we were very close to the shore. And so we would go to the beach like pretty much every weekend. And also, I spent a lot of time outside. I was also talking to somebody about that, how now as an adult, I walk to the gym pretty much every day, or I take Uber, but I'm not outside a lot. Well, I live in the city, so I don't have a yard. I don't even have a balcony. But growing up, I was outside with my friends all the time. We had bicycles, and we had a front yard and a backyard, and all of my friends had front yards and backyards, and we just did everything outside on the street. And it yeah, I mean, we were outside and we were in nature. Well, I wasn't in the city. I was in the suburbs. My parents.
Okay.
And every year you had a block party, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And we went over each other's houses for barbecues in the backyard. But so
Right.
what I was trying to say is we were outside a lot. I
Yes,
think that now everybody's inside more than they were.
absolutely. And if they're outside, they tend to be connected to their devices.
Mm.
Which
Did
means
you-
you're not grounding.
Right. Well, it's kind of separate. There's kind of a separation there in a weird kind of way, because you may be out in nature and yet there you are on your laptop or your smartphone.
Yep.
So were you religious at all as a child in your family?
Yeah. I grew up Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I went to catechism. I made all of my sacraments. My parents took me to church every Sunday. But the thing about it is I grew up with all four of my grandparents as well. So I was
I
in a
love that.
stable 2-parent household while I was growing up. And I had all four grandparents and an uncle. And so we all went to church. And I don't anymore. I don't know. I have a very strange relationship with the religion that I was brought up with. I have been to the Vatican and Rome 3 times. I love being there. I love the history. And I see it in a completely different way today. I see the Catholic
Yes.
religion in a completely different way. I live in a condominium building, and the priest that is the pastor of this parish lives in my building. So I tend to be very, I don't know, it's like I have a daily reminder of it.
Yes.
And there are a lot of churches in this suburb it's not a suburb, but this little neighborhood that I live in.
Well, just in Chicago.
Yeah, they're old churches here, and they're gorgeous and they're beautiful, and I love that. I don't subscribe to the dogma and the beliefs, but I respect the ritual, and I appreciate that very much. Yeah.
I do love the beauty of the Catholic religion, separated from its ideology or anything else. If you just look at it as art and architecture and
Magic.
and ritual, it's rich.
But there's another side to it, like not to get all Jungian here, but there's the shadow side of it.
Get Jungian, girl.
Yeah.
You are Miss Jungian here.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's the shadow side of it, which is, they pass that basket around Mass every Sunday.
Yes.
They want your money, and where does that money go? And that when we recite that creed during Mass, we believe in one God is the first line of it. And the last time I was at Mass was, it was a few months ago. I think it was when I was in Santa Fe over 4th of July. I can't remember. But it struck me. No, it was when my mom came to visit this summer. She was here for most of the summer, and we went to mass, and I just automatically started reciting that. What is it? I can't remember what it's called. The Apostles' Creed. We believe in one God.
Didn't he fight
don't know.
Rocky
Father
in
Almighty,
Rocky 2?
creator of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. And I just thought, whoa, what am I saying here? What was that, Jerry? Rocky 1 and 2?
Wasn't
I
he-
love Rocky 2.
Wasn't he the black fighter, Apostle Creed?
Rocky 2. Apollo Creed.
Apollo Creed, okay. Sorry.
Apostle Creed. I love it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Rocky 2 was my favorite. I saw Rocky 2 before Rocky 1. Yeah, Nish, go.
So was any of this part of what this shadow side of the Catholic Church, part of what when you decided to kind of separate from it, was that a conscious thing, or was it
No.
like a natural flow? Did it just happen?
It just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that. It was not a conscious decision. It was something that, I had mentioned in the beginning that I went to catechism, and I was not a good catechism student. I was a very conscientious student in school, through elementary school and middle school and high school. I was very conscientious and a high achiever and wanted to get good grades. But in catechism, I knew something was wrong. I knew something was off.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't show up a lot, and I just kind of bowed out at some point. But what the Catholic Church told me was that I was bad for doing that. I was a sinner, and I had to go to confession.
Terrible.
Yeah. And so I knew, but thank God, no pun intended, thank God I knew that I don't know if I believe you when you tell me that I'm bad for this or I'm going to hell for this. I didn't buy it. And I don't know why I didn't buy it, because my family bought it, but I didn't. And I don't know where I got that strength to separate myself. And
it's excellent that you did, though, that was actually churning.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
So transcendental medication. Listen to me. Meditation. It is medication. So are you? What do you find spiritually rewarding now?
Oh wow, that's a huge question. What do I find spiritually rewarding now? What you mentioned in the beginning, nature. Nature is what I find spiritually rewarding. I'm finding more and more that I notice more and more how disconnected we are from nature and what that's doing to us. And and so I live in it's out there, so I don't care. I live in Oak Park, which is, I don't want to call it a suburb of Chicago, but I guess it kind of, it's only 9 miles from the center of downtown. So I'm very close, but I chose Oak Park specifically for a number of reasons. And then interestingly enough, I had heard a guest on Whitley Strieber's, somebody said to me, every time you're interviewed, you mention Whitley Strieber. Yeah, I do. I love the guy. I've met him several times. I've been listening to him since the 80s. And so I heard him interview a man named William Mann, who is a Freemason, and he wrote a book called Templar Meridians. And Oak Park, he said, is on one of these Templar Meridians. And there's this architecture here. So the Frank Lloyd Wright Home and Museum are here in Oak Park. Frank Lloyd Wright he lived here with his family, and he built a house next to his studio for his mother, and it's like kind of a museum now. And it's within walking distance from where I live. And I lost my train of thought.
We were exploring your kind of where you are, what's fulfilling spiritually.
The trees. Yeah. So another friend of mine, William Henry, who has been a frequent guest on many shows, and I think I first found out about him through Whitley Strieber's show, Dreamland, that he took over from Art Bell. And then William Henry got his own show on Whitley's network there called Unknown Country, called Revelations. And William had talked about how the goddess lives in groves of oak trees.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not saying that correctly, but you know what I mean.
I do.
Right? Yes. The presence of the goddess. And so when I found out I had to move to Chicago years ago, I said, oh, wow, what's this oak park, with these big oak trees? And the oak trees here are enormous.
They are gorgeous.
Huge.
You can feel them. Their vibe is really palpable.
They're living beings to me, and I love it. And so I live in a multi-story building, like I said, I said this earlier when we were talking before, I don't have any outdoor space. I don't even have a balcony. I have a great view though. But I have access to these parks within walking distance, and I'm in the Frank Lloyd Wright Historic District, where I just live amongst these huge oak trees. And I didn't plan this out, okay, to keep mentioning Whitley Strieber, but he also had a guest on once that talked about something called earthing, where he said, this was, I think back in 2012, he said that we have become so disconnected from the earth because we wear shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And because of what is separating us from the energy of the earth. So he advocates doing something called grounding, where you walk, or I put my feet on I used to, when I run through the neighborhood, or I used to walk, but now I run, I would sit in one of the parks at the Cheney Mansion and take my shoes and socks off and just sit there for 20 minutes with my feet just on the ground. You can walk or you can sit. And I had gone to Europe, I don't know, a month or so after I'd heard that interview. And I did that everywhere I went. And I took a picture of my feet again at the Vatican on the grass, and I sent it to Whitley, and I said, I'm earthing at the Vatican. And especially because I fly a lot, I feel like I am very disconnected from the earth, and I'm not grounded, and that's a way for me to ground. And there was a story of a remote viewer, which is another thing that I was involved in for a very long time. And so
I want to get into later.
That's kind of hard to talk about. When you are just totally disconnected from reality and from your ground and your being in your body when you're remote viewing. And so there's a story, I think it's in Lynn Buchanan's book, The Seventh Sense, about, I think it was with Mel Riley. He was with Mel Riley, and he was just so out of it. And in order to get back in his body and get back grounded, Riley took him into this cold stream and told him to take his shoes and socks off and just stand in this stream, of cold running water, and and to literally get grounded. So, I tried to do that, and this is a good reminder, because I've not been doing a very good job of that. So
I wear my calluses proudly. I have to walk on the ground as much as possible barefoot, and it's just essential. And that actually leads me into the next question. I already know this about you, but what sign are you?
Taurus.
And that is so Taurus to walk barefoot.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that too, because when I get pedicures, that I go to the same person, and she's like, now don't walk barefoot. And I thought, I just roll my eyes, and I don't say anything.
She would roll her eyes at my feet.
I don't say anything. So I'm a boot girl. I like boots. I don't like open shoes. So
I do I love my boots too. Oh girl, I love shoes, period.
Why
But I'm
barefoot?
Petty?
Well, I love, one of the other things I love doing, and I could do it here in Chicago, is walking in the sand,
On the beach.
Yes.
on the beach,
On the beach.
barefoot, and just really getting in there because you are at sea level and you're just like your feet can just really go down in there, and that's
It feels
I would
amazing.
be concerned
Yeah.
about being barefoot on the beach. I'm Lake Michigan around there. I don't know.
No, it's not bad.
Glass
Yeah.
and needles and whatnot.
No.
It just depends on where you are, but in
Where you
general,
are.
no.
Yeah, Oak Street Beach is where I like to
Oak
hang
Street
out.
Beach.
Where the Drake Hotel.
So many
That's like
times
one
I've
of
been
my
drunk on that beach.
one of my favorite spot. I'd say that is my favorite spot in all of Chicago. You've been drunk on that beach where the
Many a
Drake
time.
Hotel is right in front. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Where it curves.
The corner.
Yeah.
You
I
can
don't know
see it when
why,
you're
I
coming
just
south
love
on
the
Lakeshore
vibe.
Drive, and it's
Yeah, it's
the Drake's
beautiful right there.
Love that.
Okay.
Four more weeks. Yay.
Yeah, I'll see you.
Yep.
So let's move into the dream aspect of this. Give us an idea of
Oops, sorry.
there are the layers of dreaming, of course. Give us a general idea of the dream landscape for you. So I'm looking for generalities here, and we can move into lucidity and all that. But in the generals, do you dream black and white more often, or color, sensate stuff, picking up glyphs and writing, this kind of thing?
Wow. I can't believe you said that. Okay, so my dream life is very, I have to say, very rich. I had to pay attention to my dreams because I was in Jungian analysis for many years. And that's one of the things that analysts work with is your dreams.
Yes.
So it caused me to notice the patterns in my dreams. And to answer your question, yes, I dream in color. I have a lot of repetitive dreams, and I don't know if you guys had a chance to listen to the last episode of the podcast that I did. I'm sorry if I sound tired.
November 3rd, was that the one?
We only have one rule on the show.
Yeah. What's that?
No sorries.
Okay, well, I am a little weary right now because I traveled and I flew in on Monday, and I'm a little.
Your arms are tired.
Well, you sound great.
You sound fine.
Yes,
we'll ask the listening audience to please send her some energy so she can finish the interview.
I've been crash dieting. Actually, I'm on this Atkins program, and it's really working. And I've been working out with a personal trainer, kickboxing and strength training.
Oh, girl, you're getting it going.
He's whipping my ass, and I'm not getting a lot of calories either. So
that's affecting you, yeah.
I've noticed that I'm sleeping better and deeper, and so I'm dreaming more.
It's not entirely healthy to do Atkins and a lot of anaerobic stuff.
Well, I had started gaining weight again, and I didn't know why. And then I thought, maybe it's all this food I've been eating.
You'll definitely lose weight, but
I like keto with intermittent fasting.
The problem with when you go into ketosis, you've got no fat and no carbohydrates to burn when you build a protein, and your body actually has to work harder to make muscles, and it just wipes you out. It burns you out. That's probably why you'd be so tired. So just have like a Cliff Bar or something before you work out. Yeah.
Well, I have noticed that Atkins does have some carbs, and there's a lot of treats. And I just had a pack of, before we started, they have trail mix, different kinds of trail mix in these packs. And then they have these chocolate caramels and these other, they're kind of like M&Ms. So I'm loving the Atkins. I think it works. I feel
it does work. I lost almost 200 pounds on Atkins.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
See, now before I started the Atkins package stuff, which is what I'm doing now,
I never did that.
I was just doing my own version where I was only eating protein and not having any carbs.
That's what I did.
I had some non-fat milk in my coffee, but then I would just eat salmon just by itself. I'd eat grilled salmon. I'm not answering your question. I'm sorry.
I just typed in personal chat. This is more like our post show.
Let me go back to your question about my dreams.
Sorry.
I think it's so weird that almost all of my dreams are the same themes. I have
The same themes.
recurring themes that I dream all the time. Now, when I travel, when I'm staying in hotels, I seem to have very vivid, long dreams, and lots of them, because I never sleep through the night. I always wake up and use the restroom and look at my phone and maybe read, and then I'll fall back asleep, and then I'll have more dreams. And my early morning dreams are the most lucid and vivid that
Yes,
of
that
the
seems to
bunch.
be rather common too.
Yeah.
So are you able within the dreamscape able to pick up words or glyphs or numbers?
Yes.
Excellent. And do you
Yes.
retain them enough to ever get clarity in the message once you're awake?
I retain them, but I have nothing has ever come of what the hell did I just dream? I mean, I don't know that I really ever had a great dream interpreter helping me, because I have now, Jerry said no apologies. I don't think that we're capable of analyzing our own dreams. It's like we need a mirror. We need somebody else to reflect back to us the parts of us that we can't see. And when I was living in Columbus, I was having this huge spiritual awakening. I was dreaming that I was reading out of this huge book. And I was so disappointed with what my analyst was telling me that was, because it wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear something else. And she was doing her job, she was telling me what she was trained to tell me. And
Right.
I didn't like it. I wanted it to be this mystical, spiritual, otherworldly thing where I was like receiving information, and it wasn't that. So well, actually, I still don't know what that was, but I feel like something was going on that we never got to the bottom of, because I like
Are you comfortable sharing that with us? That dream?
well, it wasn't anything in particular other than that I would dream that I was looking at a huge book, and I was reading things that it was not English. I don't know what the hell it was, and it didn't just happen once. That's what I was so adamant about, is that what is going on here, because it keeps happening. What information?
And you were comprehending it
on another level, not on a conscious. I mean, I was somewhat conscious of it because here I am talking about it. If it was all unconscious, I wouldn't have remembered.
Right.
And that was around the time that I was listening to Art Bell. I think we were talking about this before. I was listening to Coast AM, and I don't know if I was being influenced by Gordon Michael Scallion talking about how California was going to break off the continental United States and sink, and how the world was going to change. I remember this was actually when I was living in Cleveland, so this was earlier than that. I had read a book called The Aquarian Conspiracy by Marilyn Ferguson, and it completely changed my life. I mean, well, I don't know if that it changed my life. It just, maybe it confirmed for me what I had already known, and it opened up this whole other world to me, because I had been living the straight and narrow. I wanted to get good grades in high school and make the dean's list, and I was on the honor roll, and I won a national merit award in English, and I got into college, and I got good grades, and I did all that. And then after I graduated from college, I thought, there are things that are important to me that I don't want to spend my life doing something that has no meaning for me.
Right.
There's more, there's something more out there, and I want to know what it is. And so that's why I was always listening to shows. I was listening to Coast, I was listening to Whitley Strieber's show, and everything else I could find to try to get answers to what was going on. I was really into Shirley MacLaine stuff, Carolyn Mace. By the
Had
way,
you had any, during the time you were reading in the series of dreams where you're reading from the sacred book, was there anything that brought about maybe that encounter with the what we're calling the sacred book, that was dramatic in your life, that kind of redefined things? Was it just this, you were questioning, you'd done everything you needed to do, you were supposed to do, and now you're questioning, but was there a hardship that happened, something that kind of shook you up?
No.
So it was just a natural current.
There were no hardships in my life. There haven't been. I've been really lucky. I've been really, really fortunate. And the strange thing about my life, I don't think I've ever talked about this before. I mean, I've told a few people, but I have wound up in so many places where I thought, how did I get here? How did I get to visit this place? Like we were talking earlier, I've been to the Vatican 3 times. Standing in that cathedral there was St. Paul's, St. Peter's. Sorry, I don't remember. That, what is that called? Is it St. Peter's or St. Paul's? I am a little dyslexic, so
I don't know. I don't know, but I can picture
I think it's
it.
St. Peter's.
Big ass cathedral. Thank you, Jerry. That thing is so huge and so mind blowing. That
it's a basilica, right? St. Peter's Basilica.
Thank you, St. Peter's Basilica. And you know, I'm like chatting with Robert Bubal on Facebook Messenger or something when I'm like standing in line to get in, and I'm in the Sistine Chapel and I'm tweeting because, like, you know, I have like this great AT&T signal in there, and I met the VLA in New Mexico, in Socorro, New Mexico, you know, and I've been visiting New Mexico every year since 1996, and I'm leaving a lot out, but I've just been to so many places, and just kind of by chance, you know, and I meet people. I run into these people. And I was going to say earlier, Carolyn Mace lives here in Oak Park, and I was in Walgreens the other day. I never go to Walgreens. I'm not a Walgreens girl. I went to Walgreens because I was desperate, because I was looking for something and I couldn't find it. I thought maybe Walgreens has it. And there's one that I can walk to. And I had shopped in there, and I get online. I'm like, oh God, look at this line. It's so long. And I get behind this lady. I'm like, that's Carolyn Mace. I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she's one of the books she wrote is called Sacred Contracts. And
yeah, I'm familiar with her.
Yeah. And I've actually seen her. I've seen her 4 times since I've lived here. But anyway, I don't even know why I'm saying that. I've been to these great places, and
so do you think that because the flow of your life is kind of, you have had lots of it sounds like a lovely life, actually, and you've been fortunate to go all these places and do all these things with meeting exciting people. Do you think that tying this back into dream time, do you think somehow that, and with active imagination and what we project forward, do you think that has played a part in it? Is this completely, you know, we can also tie in your astrological chart, you know, like it doesn't sound like you have hard squares, or, you know, like you may have a generally favorable chart. What do you think?
What do I think is that I was thinking so many things when you were talking that they're all kind of gone now, because I get distracted by the astrology. Another thing is that I have had the great good fortune of having Robert Hand as my personal astrologer.
I love him so much. He's your personal astrologer.
Well, he's a lot of people's personal astrologer.
His name is Mr. Hand.
Mr. Hand.
He's a master, though, truly.
Cue the Oak Park Fire Department. Can you hear that? I live across the street from the fire department. Okay, so now that everybody knows exactly where I live,
Laura.
Robert Hand, right? Robert Hand for the past 17 years is at my beck and call. No, he told me the first time he looked at my chart, which was in the year 2000, he said, you have something called a mystic rectangle. And he said, you have this magical energy that you don't know what to do with. And so he gave me some pointers on what to do with it. But since I was born in the 60s, the violent, tumultuous 60s, I have that Uranus-Pluto conjunction.
Yes.
That all of us that were born then have. And it, in the specific point in time I was born, is it sits opposite the planet Saturn. Now, fortunately for me, that is trined and sextiled by my Sun Venus conjunction in Taurus, but that sits opposite Neptune for me. But it's all balanced. It's balanced in this rectangle. It's two oppositions. I have Mars with that Uranus-Pluto conjunction. So they're all tightly compact there. So I have Mars, Uranus, Pluto sitting opposite Saturn. And then I have Sun, Venus sitting opposite Neptune.
Oh, nice.
And the Sun, Venus sextile the Saturn, and the Mars, Uranus, Pluto sextile the Neptune. So they make this rectangle. And they balance each other, but I also have a yod, a finger of God, where they are quincunx the planet Mercury in Aries. So I've got some wild stuff going on, and I don't know that I'm ever going to come to terms with it. You know?
Do you, so, and then getting into the language of dreams, in your dreams, have you encountered the planets or the gods, if you want to, however you want to view them? Have you had encounters with them, with Mercury, with Pluto, with Venus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say no. One of my recurring dreams is that I am out in deep space looking at the stars close up. That happens frequently.
And have you been able to pinpoint in your dayside life when what might be going on? That's a fabulous image.
No, I have no idea. Okay, so if we were to talk about typology, which I have this love-hate relationship with, which is something that Jung, he coined these terms, introvert, extrovert, and he also developed the theory of not the theory, but this concept of the four functions.
Yes.
Right. So there's intuition, sensation, thinking, and feeling. Mm-hmm. Well, then Myers-Briggs came along, and in Daryl Sharp's words, they bastardized it. So I don't know. They took it and they expanded on it, and it's not Jung, it's them.
Now it's a caricature.
A caricature, it is.
But it's also collectivism to a point where you start to identify with the rating you get.
Yeah.
Because it's it's professional and all that.
It's ridiculous to me. I'm sorry. I did 2 episodes of the podcast about it with Daryl Sharp because he wrote that book. This. Thank you. He wrote the book Personality Types, and I don't know if I kind of went off during those. I don't listen back to them, but I was just mad because I've had so many people come at me and identify as a certain type, and Daryl's like, you know what, our type changes.
Yeah, that's the key point right there.
We don't want to stay stuck in that. Mm-hmm. We want to develop the inferior function, and that's a very
now you're talking Jung. That's what Jung was talking about.
But I'm an ENTP type A.
Oh, stop.
Really?
And I don't want to change from that.
Well,
changing consciousness at will was kind of the theme.
When I took it when I was younger, I was like an INTJ. Mm-hmm. And now I'm an ENTPA.
See? I was very introverted, and I think that I've become sort of extroverted, and
me too.
And I'm glad. And developing my inferior function is, Marie-Louise von Franz talked a lot about that. She was a Jungian analyst and Jung's closest student and disciple. And I'm kind of what is that word standing? What does that mean to stand?
To stand or to have standing? Which one?
STAN. Never mind. It doesn't matter. It's one of those millennial words that it's like
Oh, we wouldn't know what that is.
No.
Yeah, don't have the full encyclopedia of the modern tongue.
Totes.
So where were we? Please go ahead.
So we're trying to come back into the dream language.
Mm-hmm.
So I was asking if you had, like, sometime, for me, just as an example,
right,
when something activates, I have a grand T-square, and so when there's an activation of that, Saturn plays is a character in my dream world, and in conjunction with what's going on, and so I'll have these very Saturnian images, and so I encounter Saturn like that, and so I was wondering with your chart if you had encountered that. But I want to move deeper into, since we're running out of Nox Mente time, I want to get into lucid dreams.
Yeah.
Do you have lucid dreams and OBEs?
Not now. I think that I did for a while, and it's just scared me. I was just not comfortable with that kind of thing, and it stopped. I haven't experienced anything like that for quite some time. I did get involved with some people back in, I remember it was around the year 2000, because in 1999, I went to the Omega Institute to attend. It's another one of the lucky things I got to do, is I got to meet Don Miguel Ruiz, who was really popular at the time because he wrote a book called The Four Agreements. And I don't know if you guys know what the Omega Institute is. It's in upstate New York in Rhinebeck.
I totally do, girl.
Okay.
You are.
Is that where they make Soylent Green?
Yes, exactly. So he was there, and I went to the workshop. It was, I don't know, several days or something. And I was so into it, and I wanted to work with one of his apprentices because they did dream work. And it was called the Matote, where you would go, and I never went. Something happened, or it got canceled. I don't know. But I met one of his apprentices in New Mexico, and he explained to me what they did, which is you'd go to sleep and then they would wake you up so that you could change your dream. They wanted you to, yes. So it was called Change the Dream. You might know more about it than I do.
So you actually participated in this?
No, I never got to do that. And I wondered what my resistance was to that. I did show up. I met him and we talked about it, but I don't know if they had to cancel the session, and I never got to do it. And this woman named Ginny Gentry, I think she's still at it. She was Don Miguel Ruiz's, one of his student teachers, and she created her own retreat center there in New Mexico outside of Santa Fe called I forgot, the Garden of the Goddess or something. And
oh wait, I think I lived in Santa Fe for a while.
Did you? So did I.
Oh girl, I love Santa Fe.
I go there every Christmas now with my family. Yeah.
It's one of the amazing places.
Stalking us, for both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been visiting there for so long. And so had you heard, so she's outside of Santa Fe, like if you're going on the Turquoise Trail, there's a town called Madrid and Cerrillos, those little tiny towns there. She has a ranch there.
Yeah, that's where I lived. I lived above Madrid. Oh. Yes, I know exactly where it is. I lived out there in the Ortiz Mountains, out above Cerrillos and Madrid, off grid and off road and that whole thing.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I want to,
you're very good at focusing, and which is exactly my weakness. So thank you.
That's why I have like this small outline. So what
You got 15, 20 minutes, so relax.
I want to know about, so I got through lucidity, and I actually wanted to understand more of why you have a fear of that
I don't know what it is.
before I head into deja vu.
When I was very young, I would be falling asleep and I would feel like I was out of my body, and it scared me. I mean, I was a little kid and my parents didn't talk to me about it. I didn't know how to talk to them about it, and I didn't know what was happening. I mean, I was really little, like maybe 5 or 6, somewhere in there. And I know because I remember the house that I lived in, and so that's how I know how old I was. And I would say I feel weird, I feel lightheaded, I feel numb, I don't know what's happening, and they probably were scared, and so they didn't do anything about it. So I never knew what that was. And then when I was in analysis and I talked to my analyst about it, she looked at things in a very different way. She looked at it in an analytical way. And so she didn't entertain any of these other notions of what it could be in out-of-body travel. She looked at it symbolically, which again was her job.
Right.
Yeah, so I never did get to the bottom of what was going on, but I just want to say, going back to what we mentioned before, is that at some point in my life, I feel like I got a download of information because I knew things that I'd have no other way of knowing. And I don't know if this is me tapping into the collective unconscious. And if I had, why? Why did I? Was I so open to get this information? But years and years and years before it became popular, I was very adamant about recycling and just, organics and buying organic food and trying to use organic materials. And I became very sensitive to chemicals. That there was something that was very popular called multiple chemical sensitivity syndrome.
Yes.
Which I was convinced I had. And I, to this day, am very sensitive to fragrances. Any artificial fragrance gives me a migraine. I can't handle it. And I have to buy laundry detergent that's, the free and clear.
Yes.
And the fabric softener that's free and clear. And I can't wear perfume, and even shampoos and lotions and just everyday products. I have to be so careful that they don't have these artificial fragrances in them. And I'm sensitive to, like, I can't eat processed foods, that most people, it's just common, average, everyday things that people eat and drink, and I can't tolerate them. I don't know when and how that happened. And maybe it's because I was born in New York City and I grew up in that area, which was like completely and totally polluted and contaminated. I don't know, so that I developed a sensitivity. I don't know.
So you say this was, I liked this language, and it fits into a lot of how I'm seeing things recently. So you mentioned it was like a download.
Yeah.
Could you go into that a little bit?
Well, I wish I could. I think that maybe I didn't connect with the right people to validate that for me. As I mentioned on the most recent episode of my podcast with Richard Sweeney, I had a science background, and I was a really good student. I was a very conscientious student. And so I went into the sciences, and I was in the field of psychology. And when I was at the University of Washington, right away they gave us the option: you can get a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, or you can get a BS, a Bachelor of Science. And I went the science route. And then for some family reasons, I left Seattle and moved to Cleveland because of my family situation with my parents. And the college I transferred to, John Carroll University, offered a a minor, or no, it was a concentration in neuroscience. And I have no idea what your question was, where I'm going, how I got here. This is how my mind works. This is a great example of how my mind works. I don't know. How did I get here?
Well, it's download of information. And so I wanted to kind of understand, was that through a dream? How did that come about?
Yeah. So what I was saying is that I have this strong, Jerry, if I were to, identify with my type, I have a very strong sensation function. So I'm very into the facts and, what I can see and hear and touch and taste. And I can't explain those dreams. I can't explain what I was reading and the information I was getting at night. And what I don't know, because I had mentioned listening to Coast AM at night, laying in bed in the 90s with my Sony Walkman, a headset on, turning the little dial so that I can get a clearer sound of this AM radio station that Art Bell was on. I don't know if it was during that or before that or after that I'd have these dreams, because I seem to know that there was going to be issues with the environment. Mm-hmm. We were polluting the environment. We were in trouble. We were contaminating our food supply. We're contaminating our water. That's another thing. I started drinking bottled water way before it became like fashionable, and people would laugh at me, make fun of me, make jokes, criticize me, and for drinking bottled water. And now,
so do you think this was precognition, Laura, in some way?
See, now I don't know the answer, but if you're asking me you're so sweet. You're asking me what I think it was. I think that because of my remote viewing training, that there's some part of me that is open to this matrix of information that we can access, and that past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. So, another thing why I keep mentioning Whitley is because, and I did not read these books at the time, but he wrote a book called War Day, and he wrote another book called Nature's End. And my best friend at the time in college in Cleveland had read those books and was like greatly affected by them. And I feel like I kind of like by osmosis got the information through my friend about the collapse of our I don't know what I want to say. What has collapsed? Like
a bit of our ecosystem is changing up.
The ecosystem, the plastics in the ocean, and the chemtrails. I remember back when I was living in Columbus. So this was in the 90s, seeing chemtrails, saying, "What the fuck is that? That is not natural." And to this day, when I say that in front of my family, they're like, here, they roll their eyes, still.
You're crazy.
It amazes me that in this day and age, there are people still that won't pull up to chemtrails that are old enough to remember the skies before chemtrails. Because it's so obvious.
And they think that those are contrails from commercial aircraft.
It's hilarious. It is hilarious. Let's save this for the post show, though.
Okay.
So I want to get to deja vu. Do you have them, and what do you think they are?
I have a question first, real quick. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had a near-death experience? In the traditional sense. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
Cool.
Yeah.
So deja vu.
Deja vu, yes. So unfortunately, I am contaminated by the movie The Matrix. I've seen that movie so many times. And are you guys familiar with?
Yes, I think the whole culture is front loaded with The Matrix. Okay,
so the scene with the cat, so I referenced that because I was at a football game. I was at the Patriots-Falcons game on Sunday night a few weeks ago. Not this past Sunday night. I was at that game, but I was at the Patriots-Falcons game, the FA game. It was on Sunday Night Football. And this butterfly I'm in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Okay. It's like a suburb of Boston, and a fucking butterfly flies in front of me. And
Wow.
I was not down toward the field. I wasn't high up either. I was kind of in the middle. I was in the 300 section, and I thought, a butterfly. And then it flew by me again. And I remember the first one was orange, and then the second one was like beige and black. And I thought, okay, not the same butterfly. So there's not been a glitch. There's not been a time shift. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So I thought, okay, not the same butterfly, not a deja vu. But okay, so sorry for the tangent. I experience deja vus very frequently, and I always think, okay, what changed? What has changed? Now, that brings me into a completely different subject, which is my friend's Starfire tour.
I love some Starfire.
Starfire
with the time shifts. Yes.
Yes. So I met, again, great good fortune. I met her in 2009. She was a guest at, I went to, it was the first time I'd ever been to the Joshua Tree Retreat Center in California.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is where they were having
Contact in the desert.
I've only been to Contact once.
Good.
And I hear that it's not going to be there anymore. It's going to be in a resort area now. But anyway, I enjoyed the Joshua Tree Retreat Center when it was a very small gathering. It was, here we go again, it was Whitley Strieber. His wife, Anne, was alive at the time. William Henry, Starfire Tour, her boyfriend, the magician Brandon Scott. Roger Lear was there just as kind of a guest, not a guest, but kind of like a participant. He was in the crowd like I was. And I had heard Starfire be interviewed before. So again, I'm off in a completely random direction other than the question you just asked me. Glitches in the Matrix, time shifts. Okay.
Deja vu.
Starfire, I met her in 2009. We became friends. We stay in touch. I follow her on Facebook. I'm very actively involved with her. I send her pictures, and whenever I experience a time shift, when a time shift is happening, if I have any concrete data, I send it to her. In fact, one of the, I'll give you an example if we have time. Angelina Jolie's wedding dress. When Angelina Jolie married Brad Pitt, she sold her wedding photos to People magazine and was on the cover. Well, I was like online, just, like chilling out and just like catching up on things. And I saw a picture and I thought, I want to see her dress. So I clicked on it because it was on the cover of People magazine, and I clicked on the picture and I looked at the dress and I was very underwhelmed. And because I'm kind of into fashion, and you had asked about my family and what my influences were. My great grandmother was a fashion designer, and her daughter, my grandfather's sister, my great aunt, was her partner, and my grandfather owned a fabric store in New York. So aesthetic and fashion and all that is very important to me because of, I grew up with that. Anyway, so I wanted to look at Angelina's wedding dress, and I looked at it, and I remember it just being very plain and white and just basic and satiny. And I just thought, oh, okay. And then this was years ago, I don't remember exactly, but something else happened that caused me to see another picture, a different picture of it. And there were all these doodles, these colorful doodles that her kids did and were embroidered into the floor-length veil that she had on. This story is not making any sense as I tell it now, but it was an example of
a time shift.
Yeah, because when I saw that dress and that veil, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound pretentious, but my eye is pretty good at this thing. So with this type of thing, I would have seen that, and they weren't there, but it was the same photo shoot.
But see, we can pull up to this through time shift, right? And how does that cross into Mandela effect?
Well, there's a lot of things that it could be.
There's a lot of things. I still don't know what it is. I have experienced many of them over the years since 2009. They're all documented on Starfire's Facebook timeline because I have submitted stories and photos every time it happens. I was in Fresh Market in Geneva. I had an incident with coffee that changed. Also at Joshua Tree, the first time I was there, I had rented one of the casitas or I don't know, I
Yes.
don't call them that. And it had 3 beds in it. And I turned around and the beds were different.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was, it sounds crazy. It sounds
It does not to us, though. See, you're in the right place.
well,
Yeah, we totally are used to that.
I appreciate that, but somebody listening right now is just laughing their ass off saying, there's so many logical explanations, but that's another thing that Richard Sweeney talked about is this non-directed knowing, which I'm sure we don't have time to get into, but let me just say briefly, there's other ways of knowing besides rational and logical ways.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much going on. So with deja vu, when you experience deja vu, it often is accompanied by these kinds of time shifts or you check when you experience a deja vu, you definitely are checking to see if something is not like it was.
I think that there is something to the time shift and that a deja vu, I'm sure that there are scientists or psychologists that can explain that think that they can explain it. I think that there's something else to it. And I just want to say the Mandela effect is a term that was coined by a woman that allegedly ripped off Starfire's research.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Does she work for the CIA?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
And if
But I did not
say.
know this. This is interesting.
Yes. So that's another thing that I have frequently asked Starfire to be the guest on various shows so that she could clear this up, and they all fall through. And the most recent is Richard Hoagland. Because I heard Richard Hoagland on, oh gosh, I don't remember the name of it. He was on a show recently. Can't remember the name of it. And they brought up the Mandela effect, and he said, if anybody out there knows somebody that I can interview on his show, The Other Side of Midnight, about the Mandela effect, I'd love to interview them. And so I wrote to Starfire and I said, Starfire, would you please go on his show and set the record straight that you have been talking about this for a very long time. Somebody else came along, took the concept, ran with it, dubbed it the Mandela effect, and now it's sort of a household term.
I'm going to back you up on this because I'm not her friend, but I've been following Starfire for a very long time. And I was always familiar with time shifts. And then all of a sudden I kept hearing Mandela effect. I'm like, when I looked into it, I'm like, this is pretty much what Starfire always talks about.
Yeah. The only thing I have to say against Starfire is that she never wrote the book. Yeah. And I think that's why this happened, or how this happened, because back in 2009 when I met her, she was talking about the book, and she's got a GoFundMe. I don't know if it's GoFundMe or one of those money raising campaigns right now to help her. I know she's had some health issues, to help her raise the money to write this book. But girl, you got to get that book out. Otherwise somebody else is going to swoop in. These ideas are just sort of out in the air, and someone else is going to come along and grab it and run with it, which this woman who coined the Mandela effect, she did.
Well, it always struck me strange. I haven't been on Facebook in years, but I was on her page as well when I was there, and I was I found her page because of a shift that I experienced, and synchronistically there was like a friend of a friend mentioned something, and there's Miss Starfire's, there she is, and I'm like, what's this, and it lined up. So it was in my consciousness, but it's amazing how it's blown up in the last, 3 years,
Yeah.
4 years,
Mm-hmm.
under
Yeah.
Mandela effect and not
Right.
under time shifts.
Well, I think that when you hear Mandela effect, you can relate to it because you know that I also experienced that. I thought the guy was dead. I'm sorry. When he
Yeah, I
died,
did too. Didn't
yeah.
a majority of us did. So, okay.
And it
And
keeps happening. Yeah.
synchronistically on the
Mhm.
last bit of the show before we go to questions with the chat is death, the state of death. What do you think
Mm.
it is? And so let me preface this a bit, where the dream state, where we can attain a consciousness there, where we're aware and awake and we have consciousness beyond our daily shuffling of what's gone through the day. I call it the file system of the unconscious.
Mhm.
Beyond that, past that, and then memories, everything from yesterday or everything in projected forward, the stuff of tomorrow. These are all different states of consciousness where we can actually like get a vibe of they're real. Yesterday was real, tomorrow's real, dreams are real. What's death and how does it play into the greater picture here?
That is something that I have no answers for. I have no insight on. I attended a lecture. So I'm always going to lectures. When you read in my bio that I spent 3 years traveling with the Tibetan Buddhist monks, I did.
Yeah.
And they're the highest guy, the Rinpoche, okay, of the group. He was recognized, that's the word they use. He was recognized by the Dalai Lama as the incarnation of Gala Rinpoche. So he's who I hung out with. He was like the first one that I met. And he gave a lecture on, it was called Death and Dying. And I still have those notes and I need to go back because it was the most sense that I have ever heard anybody make of death. And the thing that I loved about what he said is that we should spend our later years preparing for our death. And I have to say that older people that I know, like people in their 80s and 90s, that are just kind of waiting around for it to happen, I'm thinking now, why aren't you doing something to prepare for this passage? But
Yes.
the truth is, I have to say, in all the years I've been alive and I've been thinking about this, I still don't know what death is. A lot of people say that they believe in reincarnation and they believe in life after death and they think it's this and they think it's that. I don't know. I've gone through phases where I think I know or I want to believe something, but the truth is I have no idea what death is, what happens. I have no idea because right now, today's weather report for me is that the things that people think it is, it's because it makes them feel better. It lessens their anxiety to believe that. But to me, it's 50-50 if death is just the end of it, the body dies, the mind just kind of fizzles out and it's over. I don't know. Reincarnation, I watched the movie Kundun over and over and over again, which is Martin Scorsese's take on the life of the Dalai Lama. There's also there's like a documentary movie called Unmistaken Child, which I highly recommend. You will come away from that movie completely convinced that reincarnation is real. But as time goes by, and the effects of the movie, the emotions of those movies wear off. I don't know. I'm not so convinced.
Yeah.
In reincarnation. I don't know. I really don't think it's real. If I have to
and
say.
that's it. The thing is, there's so many, there's reincarnation's only one aspect of what could be the state of death, whatever that, I mean, because we could be dead now and working through.
Yes. Like M. Night Shyamalan's movie.
Like even further back, what Herman Hesse was talking about in Serrano, and like the movie Siesta from the 80s, and then all that stuff trickled forward into modern.
Maltese Falcon.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
and here I go again with Whitley Strieber. You know, his wife Anne passed away, and he is completely, I don't want to use the word convinced, but they're writing a book together. He's communicating with her,
oh wow.
and they are in. He's told me that privately they are writing a book together. So he is that in touch with her from the other side. And you know, she talked about death a lot when she was alive, because she thought that this visitor, the quote unquote alien, the gray alien, she said that the visitor phenomenon had something to do with what we call death, because the visitors, is, you know, what they call aliens, show up with people that have already died. I don't know what that is.
That it's intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
I'm intrigued that Jerry said the Maltese Falcon.
Why?
I don't remember that much.
I was thinking Casablanca, and I didn't want to just have one movie.
It's like what? It hit me right after Laura's talking. I'm like,
I know that Casablanca's got it's got esoteric qualities to it. It's very existential at the end, and yada yada.
Yeah, no, they're great. It's great films.
I just want to add one more thing. I was
Yes.
with my father when he died. I was in the room with him. We knew he was dying. We were just sort of waiting for him to die. And I remembered, I kept telling myself, stay really vigilant, stay very conscious, look around. What do you feel? What do you see? All of that. And I was there, and I remembered that experience.
And what happened? Did you know?
He died. I didn't see anything. I didn't feel anything. I was fine. You know, I was wide awake. I was looking around. I was trying to sense whatever I can sense. And he died. I didn't feel anything. I didn't see him afterwards. I didn't communicate with him afterwards. Nothing.
Yeah, I had the same experience with my mom. It was remarkably nothing. Even though the circumstances around her death are crazy, but her actual passing was nothing. I sat there and in nothingness, really. And so it left and she was very, she promised, she said, if I can come and get you or let you know, I will. We were very close.
Okay.
And so I sat there in nothingness. So then you go through your own grieving, but, so I'm mirroring that with you.
Yeah.
I've been around a lot of death, and it's a lot of experiences where I was left thinking, wow, you know, cue the Peggy song. Is that all there is? Peggy, what's her name?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Oh my God, I love her. Peggy, is it Peggy
Peggy
Lee?
Peggy Lee.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's
Black Velvet.
Black Coffee in Bed. There are so many songs. Let's open up and ask the chat, which I have not been in. I apologize, everyone. I don't know who's there.
A lot of people are. And you know you can without crashing your system now. You remember now. Do you remember?
I know, but I just get focused in on the conversation.
My job.
So let's open up to questions from the chat.
All right. We've got a question from Yvonne. Yvonne's here, by the way. Thank you, everyone who's here.
Hi, Yvonne.
Yvonne,
yay.
Do some shout outs. Darcy, Dr. Mike.
Darcy.
Potential.
Dr. Mike.
Dr.
Awesome.
Michael Merrill. Greatest Potentials here. Groovy Bean, John Wolf, Modwiz, Radagast.
Hello. John's
Raksha.
in Chicago.
Yep.
And a Jungian.
And Raksha.
And Raksha, my moose. I love my moose.
The Moosey Tentacle. Where was that?
We've got good people in here, Laura.
The best people.
All right.
Yeah.
They're on the job. Okay. So Yvonne would like to know what your take is on traumatic brain injuries.
You know, I don't know. I worked at university hospitals in Cleveland right when I was out of college, and I was an EEG technician. That was my first job out of college. I would do EEGs, which are electroencephalographs on people's brains, and I had to do a lot of them on people who were brain dead, because we would need a record, and the doctor would have to be able to
Pronounce
say
them.
this, pronounce them as brain dead. And that was a really long time ago. Traumatic brain injuries, I don't know. In what sense, I guess?
I think she was talking about in the sense of neurologically wise coming back after a TBI. How are they different? I don't
Did
know.
you notice? Have you noticed differences?
Yeah. And she also said that her out-of-body experiences feel different after a TBI. After
And
her
she's
TBI.
She's a science background, extremely intelligent woman, and came back different. She died, and and came back more brilliant.
She's a walk-in. And we love
Oh,
her.
walk-ins. Yeah. Remember those? That's wonderful. I've been away from that for so long that I'm sorry. I just don't know.
That's all right. It's just a question.
It's very interesting to me, though. There was a woman. There's a woman named, I think her name is Jillian Bolte Scott, who is a neurologist, and she suffered a stroke, and she was trying to stay as conscious as she possibly could.
Is that stroke of she did that book, Stroke of Insight, I think.
I think so.
Oh my God, amazing story.
Yeah. So I don't know.
She gave me her, and then listening to stories like Yvonne's, and others, that people who've died and come back and were able to be somewhat conscious, give me a sense of, I think, hope in the fact that consciousness does continue in some capacity.
It's interesting that this comes up, because I was so into things like that for so long before I found Jung. And then once I found Jung, I became so enmeshed in it, and it became like a religion to me, where everything else got pushed away.
That's a problem.
Yes. And Jung is the only thing. And my podcast, thank you for your kind words about it, but my podcast is the snob podcast, because I only interview Jungian analysts. Now, of course, it's like the yin and yang symbol, where I did 2 interviews out of rebellion, because so many analysts were not responding or saying no, where I interviewed a woman who is a psychologist, and her husband's a Jungian analyst, and she's the only non-Jungian analyst to have a book published by Inner City Books. We talked
Which
about
one was she?
Maria, the woman with the very thick accent.
Yes.
Who lives in Brazil.
Yes.
Who wrote a book about Jung's love life in the Red Book.
Yes, I very much enjoyed that.
One of my favorite interviews.
Yes, it was juicy, actually.
And I got a lot of blowback from that.
Oh my God, it was so good.
From analysts saying, it's not okay what Jung did, and he had a mistress, and I'm like, you know what? It wasn't like that at all, and it was out in the open, and his wife knew what he was doing, and they were in an agreement. And how dare you judge them?
Right, and it makes him human.
Yes, these puritanical American values have nothing to do with what went on back then and there and all of that. So
yeah, I applaud that, and that, I've got to say, that was one of my favorites of yours. There've been a couple. It was almost too when they get too caught into almost the religion of Jung, it's a turn for me at this point in my life, because Jung represents a period about 20 years ago in my life.
Okay.
And so now sometimes it feels limiting. Let me just put it that way.
It's interesting. The reason why it isn't, I just want to say, the reason why it is not for me is because of something that I had heard early on actually, it was not from the horse's mouth, because Edward Edinger had died in 1998, and it was somebody who was talking about his work, and he's probably the most well-respected Jungian analyst who's ever lived, the most prolific. He was a psychiatrist and a Jungian analyst, and he understood Jung's work probably better than anyone. And he said that we've only just begun understanding what Jung had to say. And I think
Yes.
Jung was this is a big, big point for me that I think most people don't understand. Jung was way ahead of his time. Yes,
Yes.
he lived all these years ago. He died in 1961, for those who don't know. He was born in 1875. He lived a long life. He was, I think, 86 when he died. He was at this his entire life. He never did anything else. And he was completely 100% devoted to this. And so yeah, he was way ahead of his time. Most of what he wrote has not even been published yet.
This is what's revigorated me was with first the little tidbit of the sermons to the dead that came from the Red Book, right? That came from the 6 black books. And then when the Red Book came out, I got reinvigorated because it's like, here it is. Here's what I've been waiting for. And so many people that were so staunch and kind of cutting out areas of my experience as a person in the world and moving through all my stuff. We're all working with our complexes. We're, it's a, we're having lives.
It's a great segue into the next question.
And so I just want to say that these personal details have reamalgamated everything for me concerning Jung.
That's really good to hear. Thanks for sharing that.
What's the question, Jerry?
So, Greatest Potential asks, do you have any thoughts on Jung's Red Book? And I asked him to be more specific, and he said, how does it relate to Jung's final book, magnum opus?
Well, the Red Book is unfinished, and there's more to come. It was his personal diary, and when it came out in 2009, right away I attended here I go again. I attended a lecture at the Jung Center in Chicago by 2 analysts, one of which I interviewed for the podcast, Tom Lavin. He and his wife is a clinical psychologist. They went to the Rubin Museum in New York City to the event where the Red Book was revealed for the first time when it was first published. And they did a 2-day synopsis there in Chicago on what went on, what the Red Book was about, all of that. And it was before I actually got my hands on one. This may or may not be relevant to anybody, but it is to me. What bothered me is that I don't know if Jung wanted the Red Book to be published or not. He kept it private. Right. And before it was published in 2009, I was not as I have to say I was not as shocked as most people were by it, because my book of choice is C.G. Jung, Word and Image, and I make no secret of that. I talk about it on the podcast. I have it all over my website, speakingofjung.com, and there are photographs of the Red Book in that book that came out in the 70s.
Yeah.
There are some reproductions of the artwork from the Red Book in Word and Image. So when the Red Book came out and everybody was just like, in shock, I just kind of, I don't know, I wasn't as much, because I kind of had a sense of what was in there, but it bothers me, like if after I die somebody publishes my personal journal, I'm dead. But
well, this was part of why it took, why it sat for 50 years. And I mean, in the end, he did put out the Sermons to the Dead, which is kind of like it's kind of a gist of the whole thing, I think.
Do you? I don't know.
For me, reading, like if I read it between the lines, I know that that's kind of a no-no, but if I'm looking at, he wanted to, so he passed that around his personal friends, right? He had that privately published, and he gave copies to just a few people. Isn't that the story?
I don't remember Seven Sermons to the Dead. I don't remember the story of how that got published. It's it's out there. It's in the back of Memories,
It's
Dreams,
in
and
the
Reflections. So
right.
yeah.
But he did that, like, the way I understood that story
Yeah.
was he had it privately bound and gave additions to his friends. I could be wrong here. This is the story I'd always heard. And then put it in Memories, the compilation, which is Memories, Dreams, and Reflections.
Right.
And but I feel like a lot of the gist of his diary, of his confrontation, kind of ends up in that when he's talking about the abraxas and the pleroma and that whole thing, minus his call to the soul. But there's a lot there, and that was his doing to put it out before he did that. At least, he was sharing that.
Right.
Whereas his black books and then his translated red book from those was private. That was private.
Yeah, that was his version of active imagination. He was having a dialogue with those figures that came to him, his dream figures, basically. His dialogue with those images, to talk to them, to ask them questions. You see that done in the red book.
Yes, and beautifully so, mind you.
Beautifully, yeah, we think so. But I'm sure that there are some out there that think that it's, I've heard some say it's the diary of a madman.
It's so brilliant.
That he had a psychotic break. And, of course, like, that's that puritanical, buttoned up, genteel, angst American way that we're just
that he was always fighting against, though, and then trying to put all of that into the construct of the scientific community so that it would be heard.
Yeah.
That's what I gathered, having read all the works, was he was constantly, like, with the how, brilliantly, heavily footnoted and everything. He's just a consummate scholar. He was constantly trying to prove that there was something else going on. That's what I feel. That's what I always took away from it. But this is my personal opinion.
Yeah, that there's more to the story, and that he was the one that talked about archetypes, and that they're not coming from our personal history.
Yes.
This collective history, and that Jung said there's another level to the unconscious.
Yes.
That's how he differed from Freud. There's the collective unconscious, and so he saw that, and he was accessing it. And you had asked me earlier, what are you reading in this great big book when you dream? And I think that, this was all before Jung, and maybe that's why Jung was so appealing to me, because I think that, why Jung was appealing to me, I'm asking myself, and I'm answering it myself, is that this was all okay. I wasn't the scientific world or psychiatry would have told me that I was crazy, but Jung didn't, because he accepted all of it.
Yes, that's what was really great when I found Jung as well. Was like this, these experiences, there's something here, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's like, let's look at this instead of dismissing it or medicating you or diagnosing you or locking you up or telling you're this, giving you a label and then medicating you for it. It's like, okay, this is your experience. Let's look at this symbolically. Let's unpack this.
Yeah. Well, there's the other, there's the other, and we call to the other.
That's not allowed to be looked at, though, in scientism or materialist science, whatever you want to call it.
No, it's not.
Do we have other questions?
We
Look
do.
At Laura
we have
and
a lot
I
of more questions.
on.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, shut up. Okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding. So the follow-up to that question was, back to the Red Book. Do you have any thoughts on what messages Jung was leaving us with the Red Book in 1 or 2 minutes, or less?
thought, no, I don't think he was leaving. I'm sorry. I don't think he was leaving us with anything. I think that he was working through his own stuff. And through that, he developed his theories. So that's what Jung gave us, is the theories that he developed by working through his stuff. He did it for us. It's kind of like, I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to shut up. I can't go there. Okay.
It's all good. Okay. So now let's shift gears here for a second. Do you think we create the physical, tangible space, or could, through the collective creativity of our dreamscapes?
Oh, that's a good one.
Thank you, Raksha, for that question.
I'd say, personally, this is just me. I'd say no, because I think that dreams are completely subjective.
What about shared dreams?
Yeah.
I don't know is a suitable
question
answer.
From earlier, what do you think dreams are?
Okay, you could chew on it. Maybe we'll get an answer in the after show. I had another question from Yvonne. If dimensions are real and the neural net can tap into it, I guess, through dreams, is that more of a reality than this is? So
who's that from?
Yvonne, I'm trying to parse this out. So if you're in your dream, you can go to other dimensions. It's like a nexus. That's how I kind of see it.
See, what happened, like, I think I was trying to tell this story earlier, is what happened to me is that, and I got called out on another show that I did last year by this very topic. I kind of got stunted in a way because I didn't know what to do with those dreams I was having, like with looking at that big book and some of the other stuff that the very lucid dreams I was having when I wanted to go to the matote at Ginny Gentry's, place there in New Mexico. Then I went into analysis and was put in a completely different direction, where I was told to look at my dreams symbolically and to not take them literally, which is where I had been going, is that I was like, oh my God, what is happening to me? I feel like I'm going someplace when I dream. I feel like I'm leaving my body and I'm having these experiences and what is going on. When a couple years later I entered analysis, she was saying, well, let's look at the dream symbolically. And so I was looking at them psychologically.
Right.
I wasn't thinking about other dimensions and all of that stuff. So I kind of shut that stuff down and never pursued it. So I mean, I'm not going to say that every Jungian analyst is going to do that, but my analyst did. So I don't know.
All right.
I'm surprised John Wolf doesn't have a question.
I just asked if I missed anybody. He does. He's got statements here in uppercase, but they're not questions. He's saying that Jung was an alchemist, and the archons are autonomism.
Are we going to go to the archons? I was so into John Lamb Lash for so many years. I would listen to all of his nav briefings.
Oh, and Radagast.
Radagast loves John Lamb Lash too. All right, well, let's call it a show.
Who was your analyst?
My analyst told me.
My analyst?
Yeah.
Diane Braden in Solon, Ohio.
Solon, okay.
A suburb of Cleveland. And then I did some analytical work with other analysts after that. I worked with Tom Lavin, and I worked with another woman who would be very unhappy if I mentioned her name.
Yeah, then don't.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Can you change the names to protect the uninnocent?
Yes.
Just a woman in another country.
It's a joke. Never mind.
And then a local man I worked with for a while too, recently.
So when we're going to close, but stay on the line, Laura, because
Sure.
we'll go into our after show. But
Okay.
I want to send my love to everyone in the chat. Thank you.
Thank
for
you,
being
everyone,
here.
for joining and listening. And if you're listening to this later, thank you. And
Thank you, Laura.
so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And please come back sometime.
I would love to.
Or come on our other one of our other shows that
I
we're
would love
working
to.
on. All right. Next week, we have Soraya Azkath from wheredidtheroadgo.com. He's got a really great
nice.
podcast, all paranormal stuff and UFOs and all kinds of woo. And he's a really fucking awesome magician, too. So I can't wait to talk to him. So thank you, Adam. Glad to see her. Welcome. Thank you. Anyway, everyone, have a great night and talk to you later.
Bye.